This is CBC Vancouver News.
It is now separated from, there is no road going to the bridge.
Roads washed out, businesses underwater, evacuations underway. Nearly half of BC is covered by a flood watch, warning or advisory. We hear from some who stand to lose everything.
They're not surrounded by a concrete jungle, they're surrounded by nature and the beautiful boardwalk, so why not?
A new daycare ready to open in New Westminster gets shut down by the health authority. The reason? An unfenced park nearby.
This is about having a conversation with Canadians about what it's like to live with MS.
And a cross-country journey by bicycle. One man is raising $1 million to help others cope with the same disease he has. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tanya Fletcher. Anxiety is rising in tandem with floodwaters in the BC interior this weekend. A flood warning is now blanketing the Boundary, Whiteman Creek and Lower Thompson areas, and more regions still are under flood watch. The CBC's Corey Bullock is in the Kootenays and shows us just how many communities are preparing for the worst.
A warning from emergency officials has people across the interior preparing to leave at a moment's notice. Something that's already happening in the village of Cache Creek, parts of the Okanagan Indian Band, the Central Kootenay District, and the Kootenay Boundary District.
We've had a number of previous days of warm, hot weather that has ripened our snowpack and made it primed for melting.
That melt has caused rivers across the interior to rise, and now rain is compounding the situation, putting people on high alert.
I think everyone is anxious. I think people are watching the weather as closely as we are, but they are also helping one another to prepare.
New today, an evacuation order covering 40 properties in and around Grand Forks.
My prayers go out to those folks who are in the midst of this at this time, including those that are doing the work.
In Cache Creek, businesses have been devastated by the flooding.
And on Todd Road, it is now separated from, there is no road going to the bridge. I will pursue and persist to keep this place going. I've been through a lot.
Residents are coming together to help each other out.
The best thing is that no one got injured. There's a lot of damage, unfortunately, but there was no injuries and everyone's safe.
Officials warn no matter where you are in the interior, you should have an emergency plan. The BC River Forecast Centre expects these conditions to last for the next few days. But there is some positive news.
We're seeing the rainfalls maybe a little bit lighter than was forecasted yesterday. The fact that we're halfway through the cycle and seeing a lot of that rain on the ground now.
And for some areas, the worst of the snowmelt is over.
So places like Cache Creek, we're seeing the snowpack in the headwaters is for the most part dwindled. And we're seeing the response in the rivers that they're no longer rising due to that snowmelt component.
The province is asking people in affected areas to be on alert, as things could go from bad to worse in the blink of an eye. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Cranbrook.
Well, from floods to fires, there are currently 3 out-of-control wildfires burning in BC's eastern regions that have prompted evacuation orders and alerts. 61 homes had to be evacuated today near the Red Creek Forest fire, and residents are told to go to Fort St. John. Elsewhere, residents of Goodlow and the surrounding region are also under an evacuation order, that one stemming from the Boundary Lake fire. And the village of McBride has declared a local state of emergency because of the threat posed by the Tear Creek wildfire. And next door, Alberta's premier has declared a province-wide state of emergency.
And after reviewing the province's current situation and our response options, we've declared a provincial state of emergency to protect the safety, health, and welfare of Albertans. This is not a step that we took lightly, but it's one that will allow the quickest and most effective response.
In total, more than 100 wildfires have forced some 25,000 Albertans from their homes. And this is what some of those escaping from Edson are seeing as they head to safety. Orange skies, strong winds fanning the flames. Those who can still get out are urged to leave right away. The CBC's Terry Reith has the latest.
Hello there, where are you heading?
Fires, evacuations, and roadblocks. The story of Alberta today.
All this is going to be blocked off.
Highways are closed, and thousands of people have been forced from their homes as more than 100 wildfires rip through the province. The Premier and United Conservative Party leader, in the heat of an election campaign, has declared a provincial state of emergency. She will be requesting federal resources, including the military.
I think what you're seeing right now is that everybody wants to be focused on this. This is pretty unprecedented. The number of fires, as you noted from the update, has gone up dramatically from what we talked about this morning.
A group of firefighters has already arrived from Quebec and more are on the way. Smith is promising another 200 firefighters in the next few days. Plus, there is a provincial fire ban and the use of off-road all-terrain vehicles has been prohibited. In the meantime, people in the fire's path continue to move, sometimes from one evacuation center to another.
There's real frustration and people are worried for their homes and their farms.
Many are pinning their hopes on nature.
Rain. Honestly, rain would be nice.
There is rain in the forecast for some parts of Alberta. The question, will it be enough? And will it come in time to save homes, farms, and livelihoods? Terry Reith, CBC News, Edmonton.
And so let's take a look at how we got here and what's to come as well, starting with the current conditions satellite radar. You can see those pockets of precipitation coming up from that unstable air mass that's pushing in from the south. That's what's giving us some heavy rain showers at times. It's not a total washout, but you can see through the interior, that's what's giving us those heavy downpours. And it's that heavy rain that's coming down on the snowpack that's already melting quite rapidly. So it's a bad situation as you head in through the interior. It could get worse, as we can see for tomorrow's forecast. More rain on the way for the interior through Kamloops, Williams Lake, and further south where it really is a problem area, Grand Forks and east as well through the Kootenays. So more rain, but a mix of sun and cloud, and it should dry up the further on we go into the week. Well, meanwhile, there are growing frustrations from parents who are stuck on years-long wait lists for childcare in the Tri-Cities. A new daycare proposed for New Westminster has stalled out following an inspection from the Health Authority. But as the CBC's Yasmin Gandam is finding out, many who live there say it's simply red tape getting in the way.
On any given day, this neighborhood near the New Westminster Quay is packed with kids and parents. But people who live here say the wait list for childcare spaces are too long, in some cases up to 3 years. Mila Banfield already runs a preschool and is trying to help alleviate the daycare shortage by leasing a space walking distance from a public playground.
Our goal is to provide safety and continue providing excellent quality daycare to local families and families of the community who are in desperate need of daycare.
Everything in the area has to pass inspection by Fraser Health before it can turn into a daycare. But the assessment officer deemed it unsafe given the walk to a nearby open playground with no fenced area.
We comply with Fraser Health's demands of and safety requirements on a daily, and we hold them at our utmost priority. However, we think that the walk to the park is actually something great for the children, part of their daily activity.
Parents we spoke with say they have no concern sending their kids to the proposed childcare facility.
I would rather have my baby out here in nature. There's tugboats that pass, there's airplanes that fly over top, and so it's just out in nature, fresh air. They're not surrounded by a concrete jungle, they're surrounded by nature and the beautiful boardwalk, so why not?
She says more daycares are needed in that neighborhood, which is bursting with new families.
This is a little kind of niche community, and it would be really nice to have a little childcare center, something that's close to us.
The daycare owner has been given the green light from the City of New West to open the space, but it remains at a standstill until she gets approval from the Health Authority.
We are noticing other daycares walking on similar paths, some without even fences. So I guess what we're hoping is that we can have a better understanding of these new requirements that are popping up.
Fraser Health has not responded to our request for comment. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, New Westminster.
Well, coal mines operated by Teck Resources are releasing selenium into the waterways in BC's Elk Valley. Selenium is a natural mineral, but in high concentrations, it can be harmful to aquatic life. As the selenium continues its way to the American border, tensions between Ottawa and Washington are rising. Radio Canada's Camille Vernet followed the path of selenium from BC to the U.S. to meet the communities that live around the waterways.
This river, to me, is kind of like our lifeline. It is pretty much our pulse. It's our people. It's what it means to me. It's my heart.
Over the years, changes on the Kootenay River has put pressure on the fish population. David Weaselhead Jr. is working to save the river's white sturgeon.
That's why I love my job, I guess. That's why I'm here, to restore the population of the sturgeon, to get it off the endangered species list.
At the hatchery of the Kootenay tribe of Idaho, he will collect eggs from this female caught earlier today in the river. The eggs are then fertilized and the baby fish are cared for. This little sturgeon will soon be released. Burbot populations are also threatened.
They were almost all gone by the 90s. And through the program that you're seeing here, we've been able to actually bump the population back up to about 50,000 adults.
While both species of fish have been suffering for a long time, a newer issue is making things worse. Selenium, a natural element, but in high concentration, it can affect the fish's reproduction.
And some of those burbot already exceed protective criteria here in the United States, which means these young females, their eggs have a higher selenium concentration than the science has shown would be safe for them.
The worry is if the trend isn't reversed, there will be catastrophic decline in fish stocks. To find the source of that selenium, we have to follow the river, north across the Canadian border and into the Elk Valley. It's here that Teck Resources has been mining coal, which is an essential fuel to make steel.
So behind us here are the waste rock piles where the selenium actually is released from. Oxygen and water from rain and so forth will enter those piles. That'll lead to selenium being released into that water and then traveling through the waste rock piles and into the rivers and downstream.
Teck says it has spent $1.2 billion to put a stop to this release, but levels are still high.
Although you can treat water for 10, 20, 30 years as these mines are operational, you have to think of it in a larger scale, which is hundreds of thousands of years.
Scientists are monitoring those levels across the border, near the Libby Dam, in the water, fish, and even in insects. A small amount of selenium in the water can end up in a large amount in fish as it accumulates through the food web.
The concern with selenium is that it can lead to deformities in the young fish.
Government agencies on the U.S. side have been collecting data since 2020.
Oh, yeah, nice. The concentrations in the eggs of some of the species of fish do exceed the regulatory concentrations of concern.
Over the years, the Canadian provincial and federal government has fined Teck millions of dollars for polluting the river.
Up till now that the company has been out of compliance and there seems to be little or no consequences, and that's concerning to us.
The provincial Ministry of Environment says it is working on a permit change to the mining operation to limit the waste discharge. The vice chairman of the Kootenay tribe of Idaho is in Washington, D.C. to help inform officials from Canada and the U.S. as they work towards an agreement to reduce the water pollution in the Kootenay River Basin.
So we need to figure out a good way to move forward in the future that takes care of things and keeps things clean, keeps our pristine waters.
He says the hatchery and all the restoration work on the river has cost about $500 million.
To put in all this work and to feel like we're reaching, some success and getting somewhere with it and feeling pretty good about that, and to realize how precarious the situation is, it's disheartening, and it'll never stop my resolve, but it's like a gut punch.
He hopes for better accountability from the mining industry to preserve the work done to protect fish. Camille Vernet, CBC News, near Bonners Ferry in Idaho.
And in other news today, graduate research assistants at UBC have filed to unionize. But the university argues they can't because they are students, not employees.
People often don't have enough to eat. People have a hard time paying rent. Some people have issues with their supervisor, and there just isn't a way forward for them to have representation in a group.
They say a union could help alleviate low wages and inconsistent working conditions among the 3,300 assistants. The BC Labour Relations Board is now determining if enough researchers have signed on to automatically certify the union or if it'll go to a vote. Over the next 2 months, a man from Ontario will be riding his bike across Canada. His goal, to raise $1 million for multiple sclerosis research and support services. As our Janella Hamilton tells us, the cyclist will be kicking off his coast-to-coast journey tomorrow on Kitts Beach in Vancouver.
I'm gonna have to figure out how to change gears before tomorrow morning.
Before setting out on a 6,000-kilometer bike ride across the country, 39-year-old Jonathan Allinger is making sure he's properly equipped. He was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 10 years ago, a potentially debilitating autoimmune disease that can affect the brain and central nervous system with a wide range of symptoms.
It's going to be for vlogging.
From daily fatigue and dizziness to memory and mobility problems, Allinger says he realized the true impact of the disease when a friend asked him his son's name.
When you can't remember your child's name anymore, it's pretty scary, you know, and so does it make me less, capable at work or in daily life? No. But it definitely creates a little bit of an anxiety.
In March, Allinger's doctor told him some devastating news, that his MS is progressing, but therapies and counseling have helped.
There's 19 therapies available, disease-modifying therapies, and these actually can halt and stop the disease progression and really add to the quality of life for an individual.
Money raised through his cross-country journey will go towards research and wellness programs. For Allinger, keeping active is key to managing his symptoms.
So MS has really affected my confidence. You know, are you able to? Do you have enough energy? Can you do this? And when I cycle, I feel good.
Inspired in part by the legacy of Terry Fox, Allinger will be pedaling from BC to Newfoundland with his family driving alongside him in a 28-foot fire engine red RV.
This is about having a conversation with Canadians about what it's like to live with MS. And it's so different for everyone.
He says he will be pushing himself to clock hundreds of kilometers on his bike each day, a lofty goal he hopes will inspire those living with MS to dream big and never give up.
Like, inspiring's not quite, I feel like, the right word to capture the hope that he's providing so many coast to coast to coast.
Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, still ahead, King Charles' Day of Destiny finally arrived today. A sacred and solemn ceremony featuring 2,000 of his closest friends. We'll have a recap of the momentous day after the break. Welcome back. Nearly 8 months after becoming monarch, King Charles has been crowned in a coronation scaled back from his mother's, yet still spectacular.
I come not to be served, but to serve.
Charles' crowning was followed by that of his queen, Camilla. After the ceremony, the king and queen rode in the 200-year-old gold stagecoach back to Buckingham Palace, where they waved from the balcony to a crowd of hundreds of thousands. The rain didn't dampen their enthusiasm, but it did scale back the fly past of the red arrows. There were some protests, yes, and a few arrests. The ceremony comes in the middle of an economic crisis in Britain. Well, the King's coronation has been marked in Ottawa as well.
The blood of our hearts send forth a hopeful song in recognition of Charles III.
A special event took place at the Sir John A. Macdonald building across the street from Parliament Hill. It brought together artists and speakers from different backgrounds. And with a new monarch come new sovereign symbols. Canada Post revealed its first stamp of Charles III. There's also a new flag, a new crown, and commemorative coins, plus plans for Charles to replace his mother on the $20 bill and on loonies and toonies. People are also visiting Rideau Hall this weekend to celebrate the coronation. And back here in our neck of the woods, time zones or not, the overseas ceremony didn't stop British Columbians from getting in on the celebrations either.
This was a suit that I wore to a lunch at Buckingham Palace. Wow. So I felt I should wear it.
Any chance to do fancy. A coronation doesn't come round every day. So we decided that as an opportunity like this, we couldn't let it miss.
Dressed to the nines with fascinators and jewels galore, Islanders sipped a cup of tea, how fitting, celebrating the new king. Upwards of 100 people showed up at this community hall in Saanich to watch the highlights of the historic coronation ceremony across the pond. Let's bring you some other international news now. A car bombing has wounded a prominent nationalist writer in Russia. It follows bombings in August and March that killed two similar nationalist figures. Moscow is accusing the U.S. and NATO of backing today's attack. Reports say one person was killed and a suspect is now in custody. The apparent target's injuries are reportedly serious. He is a supporter of Russia's Ukraine invasion. Before the war, he fought with Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. And here is a live shot of the BC legislature in Victoria. Well, it was a grey day across much of the south coast and the province. What's in store, though, for the interior, where the weather is making headlines? I'll time out your 5-day forecast coming up next. Stay with us.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
And let's take a look at the 5-day forecast now, starting with those current temperatures across the region. Still fairly mild, double digits at YVR right across the lower mainland and on the island as well. Here's the system we've been watching as we look towards the interior, especially where they've been getting a lot of flooding. As we mentioned, that rain is going to continue in pockets, though. It will slowly move on and we'll see some drier conditions, which is good news, especially for the southeastern part of the province. Further north, up by Prince George, that's where we need the rain, and that's where some rain looks to be coming. We've got some isolated showers on the way that should help with the wildfire situation further north in the province. And here's the 5-day forecast for Metro Vancouver. Not bad at all. A mixed bag. We'll see some sun, some clouds, some rain tomorrow, and then we'll dry out and we'll warm up as well as we head on through the work week. And that is your late news for this Saturday. For news anytime, of course, you can always head to our website. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Your next local newscast is on CBC Radio 1 starting tomorrow at 6 a.m. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night.